Welcome to Newsbeacon, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. International politics is often a stage for predictable moves, where alliances and rivalries play out in carefully choreographed routines. Leaders make statements, diplomats negotiate behind closed doors, and the world watches as the same patterns repeat, year after year. But in September 2025, that stage was shattered in a way no one could have anticipated. The world was caught off guard by a moment that would send shockwaves through every capital and newsroom. In a stunning reversal, US President Donald Trump declared on Truth Social that Ukraine could achieve total victory with robust European backing. The message was clear, direct, and impossible to ignore. He dismissed Russia's military as a paper tiger, a complete departure from his previous stance, which had often been more conciliatory toward Moscow. The world had grown used to Trump's unpredictability, but this was different. For over 3 years, the war had been a brutal stalemate. Cities lay in ruins, soldiers and civilians alike endured unimaginable hardship, and hope for a decisive end seemed to fade with each passing month. Trump's words injected a volatile new variable into an already combustible situation. Suddenly, the world's most powerful nation was signaling a dramatic shift. This wasn't a polished White House address, it was raw, unfiltered, and its implications were immediate. The message spread like wildfire, bypassing traditional channels and reaching millions in seconds. Allies and adversaries scrambled to interpret this abrupt pivot. Was it a calculated strategy, a moment of impulse, or something else entirely? Governments convened emergency meetings, analysts debated motives, and uncertainty reigned. The timing during the UN General Assembly amplified the shock. Delegates who had arrived expecting routine debates now faced a crisis that demanded immediate attention. World leaders in New York faced a new hawkish American posture. The diplomatic landscape shifted overnight, and every conversation was suddenly colored by Trump's declaration. Narratives about Trump's foreign policy were torn apart in an instant. Commentators struggled to make sense of the new reality as headlines blared across the globe. The man who campaigned on ending endless wars was now advocating for Ukraine's total military victory. Supporters and critics alike were left reeling, questioning what this meant for America's role in the world. The stage was set for a new uncertain chapter in the conflict, one that would test alliances, challenge assumptions, and reshape the course of history. To understand the magnitude of Trump's shift, look at his long-held position on Ukraine. For years, he pushed for a negotiated settlement, often at Ukraine's expense, and questioned deep US involvement. He framed the war as Europe's problem, making him a polarizing figure in NATO and a source of anxiety for Kyiv. As recently as August 2025, he suggested Ukraine might have to cede territory for peace. Suddenly he called for full restoration of Ukraine's 1991 borders, a complete 180-degree turn. American politicians were caught off guard. Russian state media lost their friendly Trump overnight. Analysts debated the reasons: Putin's refusal to de-escalate or a move to pressure Europe. Whatever the cause, Trump's Russia policy crumbled overnight, replaced by an aggressive, unpredictable stance. The man who once floated recognizing Crimea as Russian now demanded total Ukrainian victory. No one saw it coming. In Ukraine, Trump's reversal was met with a mix of shock, disbelief, and cautious hope. On the streets of Kyiv, people gathered around televisions and phones trying to make sense of the sudden change in tone from Washington. For many, it was a moment of relief, but also one of uncertainty. Was this a genuine shift, or just another twist in a long, unpredictable story? President Zelensky, in New York for the United Nations General Assembly, admitted his surprise at the news, but welcomed the shift in rhetoric. He spoke candidly about the challenges Ukraine faced and the importance of international support, especially from the United States. Zelensky described a recent, unexpectedly positive meeting with Trump. He noted that Trump now seemed to understand Ukraine's position, saying, "We can't just swap territories, it's not fair." This acknowledgement marked a significant change from previous conversations. This was a far cry from Trump's earlier, more transactional approach to foreign policy, where deals were often prioritized over principles or alliances. For months, Kyiv had feared that a Trump presidency would mean lost military aid, diminished diplomatic support, and a push to accept a peace deal that favored Russia. Many Ukrainians worried they would be pressured to accept a bad peace. one that would compromise their sovereignty and hard-fought independence. Now with Trump calling for total victory, the mood shifted. It was a massive morale boost for Ukraine's leaders, soldiers, and citizens alike, who had long hoped for stronger backing from the West. Still, Zelensky remained realistic. He knew that Trump's support, while welcome, could shift as quickly as it had arrived. The political landscape in Washington was unpredictable, and promises could be fleeting. Ukrainian officials welcomed the new stance, seeing it as an opportunity to strengthen ties and push for more concrete commitments from the U.S. But they also stayed wary, keeping a close eye on Washington's ever-changing political winds and the debates unfolding in Congress and the White House. For now, Zelensky could claim a diplomatic win. He'd managed to turn a skeptic into a potential champion, at least for the moment. The mood in Kyiv shifted from anxiety to cautious optimism. People allowed themselves to hope, even as they braced for whatever might come next. But the future remained uncertain, and Ukraine knew it would need to stay vigilant, ready to adapt to whatever the next chapter might bring. Alongside his vocal support for Ukraine, Trump issued a stern and unmistakable call to NATO, signaling a dramatic shift in his approach to the alliance. Once a fierce critic of NATO, Trump now demanded not just words, but real action, military readiness, economic alignment, and a united front against Russian aggression. He insisted that NATO members step up their commitments, both in terms of defense spending and strategic coordination. When pressed on whether NATO should shoot down Russian aircraft violating member airspace, Trump's answer was blunt and unequivocal. "Yes, I do." His response left no room for ambiguity, sending a clear message to both allies and adversaries. Recent Russian provocations, including repeated incursions near NATO borders, made his hardline stance unmistakable. The era of overlooking such acts, he declared, was over. Trump's rhetoric signaled a willingness to escalate if necessary. Trump also urged Europe to take decisive economic action, stop buying Russian oil, cut off energy imports, and impose tariffs on China for supporting Moscow's war effort. He argued that Europe's reliance on Russian energy was undermining the alliance's unity. He demanded that Europe stop funding both sides of the conflict, no more Russian gas or oil flowing into European markets, while simultaneously aiding Ukraine. For Trump, this was a matter of principle and strategy. This was Trump the dealmaker, weaponizing economics as a tool of foreign policy, leveraging trade and energy to pressure adversaries and rally allies. European leaders, who once braced for Trump to undermine NATO from within, now faced a president demanding not just unity, but a new level of aggression and resolve. The shift caught many by surprise. The man they feared would abandon the alliance was now pushing it to live up to its founding principles: collective defense, shared sacrifice, and unwavering opposition to authoritarian threats. Trump's confrontational style had found a new target: Putin's Russia. The world watched as the stakes and the rhetoric reached new heights. At the heart of this saga is the collapse of Trump's personal rapport with Vladimir Putin. For years, Trump touted his good relationship with Putin, hoping personal diplomacy could end the war. But at the UN, Trump's frustration was clear. He openly expressed disappointment to President Macron. He lamented that Putin let me down by continuing attacks on Ukraine, seeing it as a personal betrayal. Trump mocked Russia's battered economy, calling it the biggest progress in the conflict. By labeling Russia's army a paper tiger, Trump directly challenged Putin's strongman image. The dynamic shifted from mutual respect to open scorn. Trump, once careful not to criticize Putin, now did so publicly. This personal falling out fueled his policy reversal, turning disappointment into hostility. The good friend had become a disappointment, and that changed everything. Trump's sudden U-turn left analysts and leaders scrambling to make sense of the new landscape. Ian Bremmer summed up the mood. Trump, with a full 180 on Ukraine policy, as of today, could change. Within Trump's party, some, like Mike Pence, applauded the move as a return to traditional Republican values. Pence declared, "With American leadership and NATO, Ukraine can fight and win a victory for freedom." This rare alignment between Trump's base and establishment conservatives could unify the party on Ukraine. In Ukraine, analysts saw the shift as Trump finally realizing Putin wasn't his friend. Moscow's reaction was outrage. Pro-Kremlin voices decried Trump's cowboy tactics, warning it would only harden Russia's resolve. The hope of a friendly Trump presidency in Moscow was shattered. The world now faced a more confrontational America and a more isolated Russia. The shockwaves were global. For Putin, Trump's reversal was a catastrophic miscalculation. The Kremlin had banked on a Trump presidency being beneficial: less NATO, more pressure on Ukraine. That strategy backfired spectacularly. The hope of a fractured West vanished. Now the US demanded NATO take a harder line. Trump's call for Ukraine to reclaim all territory removed any incentive for Kyiv to negotiate. For Russia's military, the prospect of a fully backed Ukraine was grim. Trump's public mockery of Russia's army and economy undermined Putin's power narrative. The regime's image of strength was damaged, both at home and abroad. With US support for Ukraine's full victory, Russia's peace terms became impossible. Putin was left cornered, stripped of his diplomatic leverage. Trump's dramatic shift has thrown US-Russia-Ukraine relations into profound uncertainty. The White House must now turn bold declarations into real policy, likely meaning more weapons for Ukraine and pressure on Europe. For Russia, the path is perilous. Escalate to prove Trump wrong or seek a way out from weakness. Internal Kremlin politics will be more critical than ever. For Ukraine, the future is brighter but still dangerous. Political backing doesn't guarantee battlefield victory. Ukrainian leaders must leverage support for real aid, but remain wary of Trump's unpredictability. Old assumptions are dead. No Trump-Putin alliance, no US pressure for Ukraine to cede land. The conflict's future will be shaped by a more confrontational dynamic. The lines between adversaries are sharper than ever. The path to peace is less clear, but the stakes have never been higher. September 24, 2025, a world transformed by Trump's stunning reversal on Ukraine. The move re-energized the West, upended Russia's strategy, and gave Ukraine a powerful, if unpredictable, ally. Geopolitical lines are now blurred, dominated by the decisions of a single leader. Trump's hawkishness could push Ukraine to victory, or provoke dangerous escalation from a cornered Putin. His history of rapid policy changes means nothing is set in stone. The world watches every statement, bracing for more instability. This episode shows how quickly alliances and norms can be upended. The personal drama between Trump, Putin, and Zelensky now drives the fate of nations. The war's narrative has shifted. Can Ukraine win? The path forward is unpredictable, risky, and filled with the possibility that the end of this war could look very different than anyone imagined.